Hi, Jenna. Today we are going to be talking about a brand new CS Byte called Getting Started with Scratch. So let me share a little bit about this one. This one, just like some of our other Bytes in other series, is a beginner introduce. It's getting started really if you've never used Scratch before. This Byte includes three beginner activities, but we also know that maybe some kids in the classrooms know a little bit about Scratch. So there's differentiation for those built in for kind of an intermediate, but really these are just exposure level getting started with coding and coding in Scratch. So today we're going to walk through those and just a little bit of background. Scratch may or may not, it's a web-based platform for coding. It is up to your school to allow it. Some schools choose not to. And so that's a conversation that we encourage you before diving really deep into these and getting your heart set on this activities is talk with your IT, find out if it's whitelisted for your school to be able to engage with Scratch. It is an MIT.edu site, so it is originated and built by MIT, and so that it has a Scratch Junior for younger levels, but today we're just going to be talking about the scratch.mit.edu program. And it's, like I said, a free block-based program, drag and drop, very similar to other ones that we've talked about or maybe you've learned and explored before. So let's go ahead and get started.
Awesome.
So our first activity today is for grades 3 to 8. Again, that's really just subjective to being a beginner activity, but probably you need the pre-reading skills and the computer skills to drag and drop and sign on. So about third grade would be the earliest we would recommend for this. But it's just a one class period introduction to the platform and a code scavenger hunt. So as we go through this, there'll be the first time students have used it. So you might start class with like a conversation, just leveling the playing field of who has some experience with Scratch, who might be your helpers if they know some things, and who are your true beginners. So we've included a slide, and I'm going to show you that, of just diagramming what the coding platform looks like. You'll see that different maybe than other screens is you have a sprite information plane because you can change the characters, and in Scratch those characters are called sprites. And then you've got some choosing for backdrops, so you can start to stack some content in those areas. But that is kind of more of an intermediate advanced. We're just going to start with learning some code for one sprite before we start adding additional sprites. And on the left side is your each code is under a color coded like menu. So all of these color dots that kind of look like a paint palette on the side expand to have blocks of code that can drag out into the code area that would then control your sprite. Your students can have a login or they can just create without ever saving it. But if you want to have them save a longer project, you're going to want to have individual student logins. So that would be just something to talk through and explain where students can find things. And before jumping into the Scratch.mit platform. So a couple of things as we go through and as you're looking around and I'm going to open up the Scratch platform. So again, you can sign in or you can just go straight to create. And this is what you'll see as the screen. So very similar to what that slideshow showed us. Once students have had a chance, you might want to have them drag and drop things and you really can't break it. So if you just want to get them exploring before handing out the scavenger block scavenger hunt. So with this is, I'm going to make a copy really quick, is a Google form for you to go through with your students and get them acclimated to where things are in the menus and what blocks they can use and drag out and what the different menus are. Using time up front to do this with your students, they might find blocks that you're not talking about in different lessons, and that will just add to the creativity of their projects when you give them a chance to explore and create on their own. So this scavenger hunt allows them to go through different categories to find commonly used blocks and then also some ones that are just fun and exciting to use so that you don't have to answer all the time, where's this block? Where's this block? And hopefully that they will remember. So as you saw me demonstrate, you have to make a copy of that form in advance, save it, and then send out your form to students, and then they're going to go through and explore. Right. The next thing that after students have had a chance to go through that Google form, you can also give this Google Doc and have students find a block and do a screen capture of different things with more action orientated statements like change the size of the sprite, which blocks tell the sprite to move so that they're finding those blocks that match the action. So a little bit different, but both fun ways for students to explore Scratch platform. And then, so the all of our activities, just if this is a new CS Byte for you, all of our activities have the answer keys where applicable, and then also the highlighted computer science standards included in each one. So that one is about your first class period of just going through and reviewing the platform, getting your students adjusted and finding some blocks. Afterwards, we're going to explore the Scratch provided tutorials. So Scratch provides within a menu several different tutorials, and this activity just walks you through as a teacher knowing where they are and having students, assigning those to students and having them go through it and so what that looks like. So the first thing that you're going to do is in the main lesson plan section of the CS Bytes, it tells you to go to the Scratch and go to Create, which we'll walk through in just a minute. But there is this tab at the top that says Tutorials. And when you click on Tutorials, you'll have different menu bubbles to pick. And so the first one I recommend is Getting Started. So that's what this CS Byte is about. And the first tutorial that they offer is called Getting Started. In each tutorial, there are videos and they can pause, students can pause, replay, and flip to the next one so that they can see what needs to be accomplished in a slow, chunked manner of the tutorial. So they'll get a chance to do whatever the tutorial says in the action. And you can see here that there's an embedded play, and then there's an embedded button, green button that says that goes next so that they can move to the following steps. So after watching it, and again, if you have this on a screen in your classroom, you can watch the first one together and then let students proceed on their own. I've also added a couple of discussion questions to make sure students are thinking through and remembering, and we're making those connections with long-term memories so that they're not just like, oh, I'm doing what the tutorial said, but if we can discuss what's happening in each instance, then next time you ask them to do that, hopefully they'll have remembered that step. So I've also created some discussion questions along with it. So if you, I'm going to click on this link to open it up for you. So with each section motion block, I've added some discussion questions. So if you don't know or you don't have enough experience about Scratch, then here are some pre-built in questions for you. And they kind of go in a easiest to hardest or more experienced Scratch questions would be for all questions within the motion block. So that's what the first section of the blocks that the students are going to look for is motion. And then as we go through, they're going to keep adding in to different things. So the next one that they're going to look for is the say block. So you can see here it says motion, looks, sound, and they're going to find different looks under this. They're going to find the say under the looks. So for each sub menu, we've provided a list of questions for you to have with your students to encourage the discussion. And so as students, again, these are clips from the screen so that they're going through and that you have an awareness of what they should be working on. So again, the first one is that motion, then they're going to go to the looks, and then followed, they're going to drag out and they want to move their sprite character 10 steps and say hello for 2 seconds. That timing in there allows for the words to display on the screen for 2 seconds. So if they change that to 10 seconds, then it's going to remain on the screen for 10 seconds. So once they double click the mouse or they double click the sprite, then it will do what they've coded it to do. So we're going to keep going throughout the tutorial, and now we have an event. Same with before, we've added event discussion blocks, and it's given us screen captures of the code. So the event is what starts the code in Scratch, and so it's going to be clicking the green flag in this code example. So they're going to click the green flag. For other event options, again, see those discussion questions so that students can explore. And then last but not least, they're going to save their work. I would encourage you, though, even as you go on, keep these discussion questions handy so that you can maybe even use them for a review for exit tickets or bell ringers. They'd be helpful so that students can remember what they saw in each one. So again, I've put those just in a whole separate place under assessment so that you can go back and have easy access to those discussion questions for the three menus of motion, look, and event. So other ways to differentiate and experiment by giving some more customized options, or once students have completed the tutorial, maybe you have a really fast working student, you can give them other tasks to say, okay, make it move 10 steps and make it add another 10-step block, or make it say something else. So Scratch is great for having those on the fly, make it do something else and adding a block and giving students the opportunity to create. So combine moves to make a dance or make it repeat so many times. So you can also see more tutorials for those in the tutorials tab. So really quickly, I'm going to show you where that tutorials tab is at the top. So here's again our main screen, and we've got our code, the looks, the motion, looks, and events. But the tutorials brings us to a whole nother tab, and the getting started was this first one. You can see in getting started, there's getting started ASL, add a sprite, add a backdrop, animate a sprite, and then there's basics, intermediate, prompts. And then if you ever want to go back, you just hit the back button and you're back to where you were. So that is the second activity in this CS Byte. And then the third activity is beginner and intermediate challenges. And so now that your students have explored it and you want to give them some freedom to create, we've given some beginner resources and some intermediate resources. So I'm going to go through the beginner ones first. They start off with just a challenge list. And so what a challenge list is this is a printable, and you cut it down the middle and give one to each student. And then you would kind of go through and you can either put a binder clip on to show where they're progressing, or you can go around with it as a teacher and sign off to show like, yes, they have moved their sprite 10 steps. And so these are just kind of skills checks. So you're challenging them to go through starting at the top and making sure that they know all of these skills. And all of these skills, if they don't, there's a tutorial that will help them. So these are kind of just the basics for them to know and be able to use before progressing to creating on their own. And they can create anything they want with these and have a lot of fun. They're just proving to you that they can do the 10 steps. So after they've done the challenge list, the next for beginners is the code challenge. And so they have to create, same thing, you print it and slice it down the middle. They're going to create an animation using all of the following. So they can add their own blocks, but they have to be at a minimum of the following. So they have to change a backdrop, and it has to include minimum of two sprites, and then at least these code blocks that you see below. So it has to meow, has to change the size, move the 10 steps, say watch out, repeat 10 times, when clicked, turn 15 degrees, and for wait a second. They can use many more, but those are the minimum. And so that's their code challenge. So those are the beginner ones. And then for the intermediate, it's a little bit more advanced, obviously. So some of the skills, they have to change the color. Some of them, they're just looking further into the menu for the code blocks that explain or see. There's also tutorials that talk about pixelating in the intermediate section and changing costumes. So you can see it's this sprite, his arms have changed and his legs have changed. That's a costume change. And what students can learn from that is learn to simulate movement by making him change costumes rapidly and move at the same time. So we have a color effect, wait to make a sequence, control with an arrows, create a new sprite and have a conversation, and then also tell a story. So we're adding to their skill set by doing these intermediate challenges. And then once they've done that, now they're going to put it all together with the challenge list. You can see some of the skills are back together, and now they have to do one cohesive animation using all of that and these code blocks, which were found in some of them. So this going to a specific location, the size, the graphics, etc. So that's four. You could have them at different times in your classroom, or you could do it day one and day two. So as your students progress through it, and then you've got options to kind of build you almost if you wanted to do all of those, maybe a whole week of scratch if that was everybody in your classroom. So again, you take a grade for them or not, but we've got all of this built out together for you. Excuse me. And then at the bottom of the CS Byte, excuse me. At the bottom of the CS Byte is just a list of all of the Scratch tutorials. Scratch has a great and supportive community of teachers, and they go through and talk more about curriculum connections with how you can include science, language arts, and then at Next Tech last year for CSPD Week, we provided a bunch of CS digital resources, and we have linked those as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, Carrie.